Hello everyone, great to see so many people here. I'm Tom Stone, editor of iVT International. This magazine here, we've got our stand here, as some of you may know, the originator of the iVT brand back in 1993. I think our first edition was published. It has evolved since, and we have the Expo here, which we're glad to be a part of. Without further ado, I better introduce who else I've got on stage here. We're going to talk about automation, autonomous future. We're going to take a fairly free-flowing discussion, I hope, but I've got a lot of questions to lead us, so we'll see where we go. But first of all, so we have here Michael, Fredrik, Agni, and Stefano. So probably better if I just let each of you introduce yourselves and say just a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get on with the discussion. So Michael first.
Yep, sure. My name is Michael. I'm working for Volvo Construction Equipment. I'm a research engineer, and since more than 3 years, I'm working with autonomous solutions. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Yes, and is it working? Or?
I think so.
Okay, good. My name is Fredrik Wahlström. I work as a senior product line manager at a company called Cross Control. We provide electronic equipment, mainly display computers, for industrial vehicles and off-highway industry. That's me. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Agni, and I work for Danfoss Power Solutions as an autonomous control systems engineer. So in effect, what I do is when I'm not building machines, I try to help people figure out how to break them. So our team specifically is focused on system services for autonomous solutions, and that's me. Thank you. Stefano?
Hello. Good to see you here, Stefano Fiorati, working in CNH, currently in charge of powertrain innovation, but in my career I've been involved also on several automation and autonomous activities.
Excellent, thank you. A very distinguished panel. Very pleased to have you all here. Thanks for being here for this discussion. So first of all, just wanted to set up and think about where are we right now with automation? There's levels of automation across the off-highway industry. Where do you see us now? I'm going to start with Michael because he's next to me here. But, where do you think we are now in automation?
Yeah, I think we are at the beginning of a quite exciting journey. I think it started all with autonomous hauling solutions, which makes sense because autonomous hauling there are a lot of similarities to autonomous driving, so there are a lot of learnings technology-wise. And also there was the highest customer need, I would say, because usually hauling is implemented in bigger facilities. You have quarries, you have mines where productivity matters, safety matters, so there was a national reason why it started there. So,
and this is we're thinking about the autonomous hauler that Volvo have, the H01.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and that is now a market. It was a
it's an industrialized solution. Yes,
it's in market. It's used in quarries and mines.
True.
Yeah, and an amazing cabless vehicle.
Yeah,
yeah,
looks funny.
Sorry, I interrupted you there, but yeah, that was.
I think that's where we are.
That's
today.
where we are. We'll talk about where we're going in a minute. Does anyone else have anything to add on that? Yeah, okay. We've got maybe more of a CNH view on this.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you're looking at the agricultural sector, beside the guidance that is already there since years, we are definitely looking at the automation of machine functions. In a way that we start to build the steps towards autonomous. But definitely everything goes through the automation of working function, because tractor implement combination or even a self-propelled machine is basically doing a job, performing a job like construction and so on. And so we need to look at those working functions in a way that we can be prepared. That is one of the elements that we are.
And New Holland have, of course, the R4, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And then, funnily enough, they're both cabless solutions, in fact, the R4 and the H01. But that's not the only way to do automation at all, which I'm sure we'll get to. From the component side, is there a sort of are you seeing a difference in what you have to provide to OEMs in terms of components for their automated vehicles right now? In the real world, the ones that are out there?
Should I take that?
Yeah, go on.
I'll try that. We come typically from the user interface perspective, provide user interface to operators and also autonomous vehicles. Often you forget about that. Even if a vehicle are autonomous, you need to interact with it somehow, either via radio control or a graphical user interface. So from that perspective, it's not that different. Then it can be different when it comes to legislation or also requirements on safety and other things. But from a general perspective, it's pretty much the same, maybe more redundancy and so on, but otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything you'd like to add there, Agni?
Yeah, so, well, autonomy right now, since we are we have a wider portfolio of things from electrification to valves to virtually, now we also sell like autonomy stacks. What we are seeing is it depends on the industry to some extent, how far along they are. And naturally, like in logistics, agriculture has been like fairly far ahead. There is like a higher level of autonomy that we observe. What we are also seeing is where industries where there is a rapidly changing environment, right? Construction is a good example. What we see is typically that there is autonomy has started to break in the form of assist functions. Autonomy is picking up in the forms of like trying to reduce a bit of like repetitive work in most of the scenarios. And that is something that we find interesting in terms of, because now we are seeing the need to design software interfaces, like Fredrik said, to deal with this individual components working together. And that's kind of like the main thing. Our focus has primarily been on trying to figure out how do components interact well enough for autonomy to function. It's fairly easy to look at a machine driving, but what you don't often realize is the amount of effort that goes into getting it to steer to the angle that you needed to steer to, which is something that autonomy interfaces assume. So that's been our perspective on things.
Yeah. So the challenge is moving on to some of the challenges that we're seeing. So we are seeing some autonomy out there. As we say, we've got some autonomous vehicles that are available to buy. But there's challenges in sort of moving this forward and maybe scaling this up to different use cases. And where do they lie? Maybe I'll come back to you, Stefano. Where do you think the main challenges lie in scaling up that kind of autonomous function?
But if I can say, in terms of components, I think we have a lot of technology available. Control unit are good enough also in terms of computational capacity today. I think that one of the big challenges is to make all of them working in such a challenging environment like can be the agriculture or the construction. And here we need to distinguish a little bit because agriculture is characterized by a structured field where we have dust, mud, a lot of different environmental conditions, sun up and down, depending on the day of the hours of the day. And this is the challenge for agriculture. Whenever we jump to construction, and I hope you can confirm, construction is working a little bit differently because at least for our perspective, based on our CNH product, construction machinery are changing the environment. Because if I dig terrain, if I do modify the environment where the machine is operating, and this is adding a level of challenge a little bit more, I would say, higher with respect to agriculture, exactly for this kind of things. And so we need to ensure that the technology and the control strategies and whatever is working, are working properly in this kind of different conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, would you agree with that, Michael?
Yeah, I was just about to comment on that. I fully agree. I mean, that's why the agriculture is ahead when it comes to autonomous solutions. Because, I mean, for construction equipment or for construction industry, it's important to sense the environment, to interact with the environment. So this context awareness makes it much more challenging to implement, let's say, autonomous solutions for excavators, wheel loaders, because that's the next step for us. Not only focusing on hauling, but also interacting with material. Yeah,
but the hauler that you have does obviously move around a changing quarry site, so it is able to detect and sense its surroundings to an extent.
Absolutely, but I think it gets even more complex if you imagine that an excavator needs to dig material because it doesn't know what kind of material, doesn't know the physics. So this is the next step towards autonomy on site.
This is where we're heading. Agni.
Yeah, so I would like to echo both of them. And something that is important that I think gets often overlooked is the fact that when you build software, autonomous software specifically, I think the biggest challenge is validation. It's because autonomy inherently is a probability-based game, right? There is nothing that is certain per se. Robotics generally assumes distributions of probability to function. And the main challenge that you have is not to kind of make something work, but figure out what are the conditions under which the system will fall apart. And that is, I think, the biggest challenge in general. And of course, certifications help it to some degree. So if you have a standard that says do this, forms like a background recipe of it. But if you're building applications, autonomous applications, I guess, you would definitely need to figure out how to validate them. And that's where I think the biggest problem is.
That is a challenge. Yeah, Fredrik, yeah.
From a business point of view, looking at where does it make sense to do full autonomous vehicle, I'm thinking that semi-autonomous vehicle make more sense, especially for construction. But then depending on what type of, you mentioned the excavators, very complex vehicles, can do multitasks, very hard to do full automation there. But if you take, I don't know, an asphalt paver or something easier, putting out asphalt, you have a road that you just do every day. That's more predictable and easy to do repetitive things all over and again. So like thinking of how to automate a process within the autonomous vehicles. So to go for a tractor or an excavator, that's really the hard targets from my point of view.
Yeah.
To go for auto steering in agriculture, that's more like you just need to steer in a straight angle. That's pretty much it. So it's much simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I did want to focus a little bit on the R4, which is the New Holland cabless tractor. Small vehicle. Tell us a bit about that and how that was developed and how it's being used.
Yeah, basically the R4 New Holland robot starts from a clear customer need, I would say. In particular, if we look at the high-value crop, vineyard, orchard, there we have a couple of problems. One is the lack of skilled labor, which is one of the elements really important to be considered. And the second element is the narrow time window to perform a task. Climate changing is bringing this kind of narrow time window, because between one event and the other, we need to perform a task. And so we need to make sure that the machine can work 24 hours a day, just exactly to go in the field when it's needed.
Specifically for harvesting fruit, you're talking about. That's the
not only harvesting fruit, but I would say also for the operation like can be spray, the treatment that I need to do every time that it's raining. I need to enter, go back into the field and do that. And so these are the two main reasons. Then of course there are others lateral, but still important. The fact that that kind of farmer or customer is particularly sensible to oil contamination. And the platform we have developed is basically an electrified platform with off-board electric power capabilities for the implements. So we are not dealing anymore with hydraulic, or at least for certain tasks. But definitely it's another element to be considered. And this is why we started, why we develop, why we are basically operating with that, which is a full autonomous machine capable of working in also GNSS denied environment. Let's consider California vineyard, very, very rich of canopy, let me say, and it can work there also through vision guidance and so on.
And it's very eye-catching because it doesn't have a cab. It's quite a small vehicle, but it's cabless, and that's sort of like it's not always cabless isn't always the way to go. But for this particular vehicle and its function, like you say, there's a lack of labour. It's got to work 24 hours. There's not much need for a cab in this, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That and consider that sometime we are doing also operation with chemicals. Today our tractors are super safe because we have filters on the cab and so on. But with that we completely remove also that aspect. We have a robot going through the field distributing chemicals, and so that is definitely an added value.
And it will use LiDAR. It's got LiDAR on it, right?
A mix of LiDAR cameras, because on top of the it's not only guidance, pure guidance. It collects also information about the crop, about the situation that is evolving in the season in a way that can provide meaningful information to the farmer that stays in the back office analyzing the information and so on. So it is a mix of sensing technologies.
It's a very impressive cabless vehicle. In fact, it reminds me that on the cover of one of our magazines, we had the Case Construction cabless Impact. But that was not really a real-life vehicle. That was a concept. And because it was construction, I suppose, much more tricky to bring that to the real world, as we were saying earlier. Does that tally in the way that the H01 works and some of the autonomous solutions that you're deploying? The LiDAR still a key component of how you're deploying that, or are there going to be other ways of you doing this in the future?
I think you mentioned it already. It will be a mix of different sensors because you need to balance the benefits of each system a little bit here. I mean, we have quite rough environment. We can have dusty environment. We can have foggy environment. So there's no one sensor that can do the trick. So it will be, in the end, a sensor fusion that we need.
Yeah. Because you see some of the autonomous cars that have completely video-based. Is that something that you could see happening in sort of the off-highway world?
We don't.
No. We need a little bit more redundancy than that for the safety applications. And beyond, we mentioned the H01. Beyond that, what other sort of machine control and autonomous functions are coming in for Volvo? Maybe not fully autonomous, but we're talking now a bit more about the machine control and assistance.
I mean, I think that the future of this market will be mainly dominated by partnerships with suppliers. So, and for us, it will be key to integrate those supplier solutions. So, what we are challenged by is to identify or set up the right interfaces so that we can allow a partner system to get access to machine capabilities. This is the first step, but this needs to happen in a safe and secure environment as well. So, for us, we see the challenges in exactly setting up those partnerships and making sure that we can combine the machine with a robotic solution and form an autonomous solution for our customers. Yeah.
And we have a couple of suppliers here who can maybe comment on that. And I wanted to talk about how these solutions are provided, and can it be a standardized package that is good for all OEMs, or does every machine design need to be more bespoke?
Simple answer, no. But I think the trick would be to form some kind of standards for this and really do collaboration within the OEMs and the providers of different equipment. To do everything as one OEM themselves, that will not be sustainable. You need to buy from different sources and be able to combine it in a complete system. So open standards, no lock-ins, try to create collaboration in the industry. That would be the fastest way to move against this, I think.
And where are we? Are there with open standards? Are the standards open at the moment, or would you say no?
Not fully. So I do agree, and I think Well, yes, so you basically do need open standards, but there is the problem of like how much do you open the interface to? Because at some point, like an autonomous interface is dealing with a lot of extra information on the side. So the standardization I feel needs to happen at a slightly lower level to function blocks in general, and not like this is an excavator function, like which is basically the fully autonomous excavator. And I think, and I would like to, in fact, ask my fellow panelists if you guys think how much, like, do you think it would be better if you can kind of make the vehicle your own with these standardized packages, and to what extent do you feel it would go forward with?
I mean,
I agree on the level there.
Yeah.
It needs to happen on a low level to standardize on like a machine type. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen.
If I can add, from an agricultural standpoint, here it depends only from the use case, because just to avoid to go too long, but if we consider, for example, a self-propelled machine, that is contained machine, a combine harvester is a factory on wheel. Everything can be there. Maybe the only standard that we need to have, maybe for sure, is the communication with other vehicles. When we jump to a tractor implement combination, there is where the standard is getting important. Especially in this segment or in this perimeter, the Agricultural Electronic Foundation is for us a point of reference, because we get together with all the OEMs to make sure that the tractor of the OEMs A talks with the implement of the OEM B, and in terms of communication, in terms of the way that the implement can control the tractor, and recently also in the way that I can add the technology. Let's think about the vision guidance. We are talking about automation. Vision guidance can be basically system technology, can be connected through isobus protocol as well, in a way that we use always a standard for communication. And I think that is very good. It takes time, because it's a collaborative environment with all the OEMs to get to a standard. So it's sometimes a challenging environment, let me say, to get to a definition, a consensus around the things, but it is extremely helpful, because this goes in favor of the customer, of the end user that need to use our machines. And this is something that I notice, especially on tractor implement in the agricultural sector.
Very interesting. Yeah, Michael, would you agree?
yeah, I would like to comment on this interface discussion. I think it's the right way to focus on standardized interfaces, and we should not try to reinvent the wheel. We should try to use what is existing. But I'm challenged by defining them as open, because, I mean, in the end, you have heavy machinery and you have an access to the machine capabilities. You're controlling it with a computer. So I think if open means that the machine manufacturers are not involved in this kind of integration anymore, then it's a no from our side. I think it's more important to have a collaboration here, because we need the experience and the expertise on the machine side, how it is actually deployed on site, how it's used. We need the experience and expertise on the robotics side, and they need to work together to have a really good solution, and good means safe and productive. So I think that's the way we should go.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, go.
On the open there, totally agree. Certain interface needs to be locked, and they are proprietary and needs to be protected towards other system, especially when you're bringing safety into the chain. You can really mess up things that you shouldn't be able to touch if you keep everything fully open. But what I mean by open was more like open standard, so you also enable connection between different systems. Yeah. That's my key.
Then we are on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're falling short of a situation where you might have maybe a kind of app store where people can install whatever apps they like on the machine, then their autonomous functions. Could we get to that point, or is that maybe a bit too open?
Correct.
Yeah. Now, let me see, where are we moving on? We're keeping an eye on the time. We've got 15 minutes left. I know Stefano is off to another, he's got another presentation right after this one, so we're going to make sure we finish on time and keep some time for questions at the end. So moving on, we've covered that area. We have. Well, I suppose I did want to touch on, some of the, this maybe ties in with sort of regulations and stuff as well, which I did want to cover a bit of that. But thinking about the responsibility, safety responsibility for autonomous systems, who's at fault if something goes wrong? Is it the OEM? Is it the supplier? Is it the operator? Do we have a sense of where that responsibility will lie? Yeah, or does already lie in the machines that are deployed? I guess I'll go to Stefano again.
Yeah, but in a very simplistic way, I would say, but then I leave the colleague also to add. I think that who is in charge of the complete system is the OEM. Is the OEM that knows how the system works in the field and applying the proper, if we're talking about the functional safety, it applies for subsystems in a way that we get to targets, and those targets then can be used to talk with you guys in a way that we get to something that is applicable, safe, and good for our customer needs. But ultimately, I think the OEM is supposed to drive this kind of discussion, setting the target based on the initial requirement that are based on the customer needs. So I'm going backwards, but yeah.
It's very clear, isn't it, when it's a cabless vehicle? But when you've got maybe someone sitting in the cab and it's operating autonomously, does that create a sort of grey area?
But you say the cable, sorry, I was...
Yeah, so I think in some of the new Holland tractors, you have autonomous functions, don't you? So you could sit in the tractor and not touch a thing, and it's working autonomously, although in theory, the operator could take over if something went wrong. But it's that slightly grey area, isn't it, of like who's responsible then if something goes wrong?
But in principle, whenever we are jumping into this automation of functions, there is always a functional safety level together with that. The operator that is in the cab can always override and jump in, but we start from the assumption that everything is done properly, respecting the functional safety analysis and so on. That is, it's true, it's a gray area, but definitely it's... to me, it's a point of to be considered. Then, of course, today what we have automated in terms of safety-relevant function is the steering. Auto guidance is already there since a lot. Braking is not yet automated, and so the risk is relatively limited because we are always working on the steering in terms of safety-relevant. Then, the other functions that are automated are working functions. So it's different kind of set of functions on which the operator can always come, but are not really safety related, are mainly related to the performances of the machine, on the productivity of that.
Right. Yeah.
I would like to comment on this statement that the OEM should be the one responsible for the solution. From our perspective, it's a little bit more complex than this. I mean, technically or legally, the entity that introduces a product to the market, let's say an autonomous machine, and puts a type plate on it, and for European markets also a CE label, is responsible for the machine. The question is whose name is on the type plate. And I think here we have different shades of gray. I mean, of course it could be the OEM, if we consider that the OEM has developed the full solution itself, or himself. Or we have a solution where we talk about retrofittation. So a supplier adds something on the machine that changes the nature of the machine, then we have a substantial modification of the machine, and then perhaps the whole responsibility changes. So the type plate needs to be renewed. Yep. And then it's perhaps the third party whose name is on the machine. Anyhow, for us, I mean, safety has always been a core value of Volvo. So, I mean, regardless of responsibility, if something happens, it will be our name on the machine. So naturally, we have a high interest that the solution that is out in the field is safe.
Yeah.
I think in the end, if something would happen, it would be a blame game. We'll start with the OEM that has put the CE marking on the machine. and then backtrack it to which component that failed, and then it will be a blame game all over. So
Go to right down to the
no one will go free from the situation.
right down to the component level.
Yeah,
So you don't feel like you're safe from the possibility of failure.
So yeah, I mean, safety has always been a scope definition problem, right? Like the idea is the system owners define the scope of the machine safety. You break it down, you pass it to the different subsystems, and you force that each subsystem does its own thing. This is what we call an operational boundary. And I guess where the OEMs come handy is they explain what the operational boundary of the system is, break it into subsystems, and then we work on each subsystem's operational boundary. So when a machine fails, the question is often, how do you find out which operational boundary was violated? Or is it just something that we kind of broke in the process of talking to each other? Because that's actually a pretty decent challenge when it comes to like safety problems. Because you can have different subsystems and there is a slight disconnect somewhere that just didn't get caught in our safety analysis. And that's usually where machines fail.
And the safe system tends to spread out. So it's like a disease. Safety can spread.
So but you have like 10 components. Safety is not the 11th, like kind of just placed in each subsystem itself.
My view of safety is typically that you should isolate it as much as possible and try to contain it in one sort of entity and keep the connection towards other things limited, so you really can protect the boundaries, as you mentioned. That's the key. Otherwise, it's a mess to handle that.
I suppose ultimately it is, as you're saying, if we can pinpoint and identify what system has failed, then that is, we can fix it and we can make it better for the future. And sometimes it's just some problems are very hard, particularly if you're putting out autonomous vehicles into the real world. Ultimately, they're going to be, I think, they've got to operate at a much higher level of safety than any human in the first place. So, that's sort of they've got a high bar to cross there. And there are, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the regulations that are coming into place. There's a bit of blue sky thinking that we could do at the end if we have time about where we're going. But just to touch on this before we run out of time, there's the EU machinery regulation that comes into force in January 2027, so not long. And for OEMs deploying AI-based functions, the AI Act's high-risk system requirements apply on top of that. Are you any of you able to comment particularly on either these regulations and what they mean for vehicle developers, not necessarily just automation?
So I mean, I can take an engineer's perspective on this because again, not a regulatory expert. But from the AI Act's perspective, what we see is there are classes of AI accelerated code. Some where you're effectively just testing. That's fully okay. And what the AI Act is going to do, in effect, is effectively create boundaries for what these different systems are liable for and what are the metrics that they succeed on. Something that we just touched upon, in fact, was the operational design domain, right? The AI Act is going to help people understand and formulate what this operational design domain is. And one of I feel the challenges with construction, and Michael, feel free to disagree with me, is that the operational design domain of construction machines, like we said, like a field sits still, the construction site doesn't, is basically that the domain is not fully describable yet. And when we talk about these systems that are doing any sort of safety with AI, I think it becomes critical that you're able to explain, quantify, and document the process in which it was made, the process in which it is being executed, and to what extent it actually functions. So it goes back to my point against validation, right? You need to know what will break it, to what extent it will remain accurate, what was the infrastructure that was used to create it, because tomorrow if a system fails, which was, let's say, doing a vision mapping for like person detection, you want to be sure that it had the correct data and everything was labeled properly enough and there was enough diversity in that information to actually act on it. And this is where I think we are kind of coming into a conclusion with the AI stuff. So, I would love to hear your opinions on this.
Oh, thank you. No, I mean, yeah, there's still a lot in discussion, as you said. Certainly, it's important to find, to find the right balance between what is regulated within the AI and what is regulated within the machine regulation, because there are these two elements, especially for AI, what is called high-risk systems, the safety relevant. I think that there is a need of clarity over there, and I know that there is a work in progress. So for the rest, what I can say, AI, we are working on, also for non-safety relevant functions. We have already implemented combined harvester. Combined automation is one example. It's based on contextual AI. It goes over 280 million combination every 20 seconds to find the best, the optimal. So think about this, and it's already implemented. So there is a lot of investment from our side on AI. Of course, there are a lot of discussion, and hopefully it will get to a clarification on this point.
Yeah, AI. We could go into AI a lot, couldn't we? But we are running out of time, and I did say we'd have a few questions. I don't know if there are any questions. If anyone is there anyone on the floor? Anyone over here? No, we're okay. I can carry on with my questions if no one has one, which is great. We were talking about AI. Is Michael? Is AI going to be the thing that sort of actually helps us to solve some of these really hard problems with a machine like an excavator, actually understanding its surroundings?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially machine learning is the key to success here. You cannot implement rule-based algorithms that will mimic the behavior of an excavator. You need algorithms that are capable of understanding the environment, evaluating sensor data, and actually performing the operation. And the only solution that we have seen so far is the use of AI, with all the challenges when it comes to safety and security. I mean, this needs to be fixed somehow, but I don't see any other way around that.
And hopefully we will fix these problems. Is that was sort of my blue sky question that I skipped over, but I'll come back to, which is what trajectory are we on? Do we think for the future with these systems? Are we going to sort of see a bit of a plateau where it's like small cabless vehicles, but the bigger vehicles are all fully cabbed, or do you think we are going to see more and more automation? What do you think? Fredrik put his hand up, so I'm going to go to you first.
I'll give it a shot. For sure, it will increase. First, it will go to machines that are. I think your R4 is a good example. You operate it 24/7. You have a very defined task. Not simple, but still, you can define it very well. Compared to an excavator, which is much harder, would require like AI technology and complex models to mimic that. So it would go faster and faster for the smaller machines, and especially the machine that you have high utilization on, that you operate 24/7 all around the year, that you can save a lot of cost on reducing the man hours on. For machines like, things that you use once a year, then it wouldn't make sense to do automation. It's cheaper to put someone to operate that type of machine instead. So again, look at the business logics, which machine would make most sense to go for the automation first on, and also the level of automation. Would you go full autonomous, or can you do semi-autonomous and do automation on small processes on machine or subsystem? I think that is the trend forward. But for sure, it will grow. This is an area that is growing in general.
Yeah, this is something that's not going to stop, and it's a good vision there for the future. And we are nearly out of time. Does anyone have any last closing comments on visions for the future?
One very quick point.
Yeah.
We are talking about a lot of automated functions and so on. Whenever we are talking about automation to autonomous, let's not forget about the capability of the machine of doing self-diagnosis. That is extremely important. It's another aspect but it's really important, especially if we're looking at full autonomous vehicle, because if we don't have, the risk is that the machine stops in the field without saying anything, and it's difficult also to intervene, to adjust. So there is the automation of function, but to me there is also the path of the self-diagnosis, or I don't want to use predictive maintenance, but self-diagnosis to me it's much more appropriate.
I mean, at the very least, it should be able to interact enough with the other components of the machine, regardless of being hydraulic, electric, and be able to at least say that my safety envelopes, my functional envelopes are being invalidated, right? Because the second you start breaking those, then again, you know, your machine will steer a little less, little more, and then stuff starts to happen. So
I started with the user interface perspective, and then tied back to that again. You will need a user interface in the end to
for sure.
We want to avoid these problems, but we are completely out of time. So I just have to, and I know Stefano has a very important point on the other side of the hall, so we better get you. Did you have any closing comments, Michael? Because I'm conscious that I didn't go to you at the end there about the future.
No, I think it's pretty excited.
We're covered. Okay, well, thank you to everyone for watching. As I say, iVT International, we got our stand there. You can keep up with the news in the magazine, on the website, all year round. So do visit ivtinternational.com. And thank you very much to my panel. That was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.